and having a grand old time. Factions. Basically, we're going to talk about different political factions in France. Each had a different vision for how they wanted things to go, but that's going to change from point to point. There's actually four phases of the French Revolution. Finally, emigres. Basically, whenever things go really bad, people don't stick around to see what happens. Those who can't escape disaster will do so. The emigres were the French nobility who, once they saw what was happening amongst the peasants and the bad stuff that was going on, basically wanted to get out of town. So they fled. They were emigrants. There's an E. That's the term emigres. So, as I said, those words aren't things you actually know. Those are on workout.com. But they'll help inform us a little bit as the political situation we find ourselves in. We'll start off. Politically, France was divided into three estates. Don't write this down. This is just a timeline. Those of you guys watching at home will be able to find this on hyperhistorytext.com. Those of you guys right now, basically, this is what we're going to look at. Yeah, we're recording it, so you know. I like to occasionally say hi. But as I said, they were divided into three estates. The estates were based on what class you fit into. So the first estate was that of the church. The second estate was the nobility. The third estate was everyone else. So each of the first and second estates had some pretty significant powers. First of all, they were both very wealthy. The nobility controlled land, had titles. They were involved in politics. The church was also likewise very heavily involved in politics. Consider Cardinal Richelieu or Cardinal Mazarin. So the church still played an important role in the state. The other folks, on the other hand, the majority of people had none of those privileges. One of the biggest privileges that the first and second estate had was the fact that they didn't have to pay taxes. Consider this. If you have a significant portion of your population paying taxes, but the folks that control most of the wealth, most of the power do not, don't you think that's going to make the working class a little upset that they have to pay taxes? Because consider it this way. If you take something like 10% off in taxes, yeah, that's not really that much, not percentage-wise. But depending on how much money you make, it could be a whole lot of difference. You know, if you only have $100 to live off in a month, $10 is going to be pretty important to you, yeah? So, you know, even with something like a flat tax rate, there are still issues involved. That's why we have graduated taxes. But these guys don't even pay tax. You know, the folks who can pay the most don't. Do you think they want to pay taxes? Of course not. Why would you want to lose money? You don't have to. They fight to keep this right bitterly. And the way they do it is in their version of Parliament called the Estates General. Basically, each of the estates had a vote. The first estate, the second estate, the third estate. Now, let's say the third estate is tired of this unfair treatment. They say, hey, we think that everyone should have to pay taxes. How do you think the first estate's going to vote? No. Second estate? No. Third estate? Yes, please. Oh, sorry, there's 2 no's and only 1 yes. The system was rigged in favor of those already in power. So already the system is untenable. It's not going to last because eventually people will lose their minds over it. The problem, though, people really aren't terribly motivated to revolt for small reasons, for abstract reasons. If someone takes away your right to, say, park in a specific area of town, are you going to go start a revolution? Probably not. What about if someone's spying on your phone conversations and listening to you talk?
Yes.
No, because they already do that. The NSA has been doing, yeah. There's not a revolution going on. We're upset, sure, there's people writing stuff on the internet about how upset they are, but there's not people taking the streets. Now, it takes something much stronger than that. What happens is the economy of France is terrible. As we've established, Louis XVI is spending far more money than he has, is pushing the country to bankruptcy. In order to make up the difference, he keeps taxing more and more the working class. You see how that works? Raising taxes on the people who are already taxed. Of course, that makes people pretty mad. But even that's not enough to really start a revolution. What really starts it are the problems with agriculture. For reasons that aren't really controllable, the crops start doing poorly. Now keep in mind, most people are farmers, yes? So the food that they grow, that's what they pay in taxes. They don't pay money per se, they pay parts of their food that they grow. So let's say not enough grows. The food you need to survive is right there, but you've got to give it to the king. Pay your taxes. So that's going to probably make you pretty mad, yeah? But take it one step further. We could maybe accept this if the king was like, you know, all right, I know, guys, this is bad, but I'm going to use this money and we're going to develop the soil, we're going to work on new technologies, we're going to make it so that we can do better and get out of this economic downturn. You know, we could accept that because, like, okay, it sucks now, but, you know, he's working on making it better. What does Louis spend the money on? Party! Yeah, we're going to have parties, we're going to have a good time, we're going to have big feasts where we're eating until we got to throw up and we'll go puke in the bush and we'll come and eat more. You know, this is not what, I mean, this is wasting people's food and people are starving to death. That's not okay. That's what causes revolutions. So the situation is untenable and poorly managed. There's also a significant disconnect. Consider this. Louis grows up in a palace, yes? Every single thing he wants, he's given. Every whim he has is catered to. He's never had to work a day in his life. He's never really had to worry about anything, not in terms of, you know, am I going to have enough food to eat? How much can he really sympathize with the peasants? You know? And the thing is, people run with this and tell stories about how the court just does all kinds of wasteful things. One of the most famous of these is about Marie Antoinette. There's an expression that she's famous for. You guys know it? Let them eat cake. Yeah. She never said that, though. That was made up to make her look stupid and make her look uncaring. Do you guys know why it's a dumb thing to say? Do you know what the story is? Supposedly, King Louis was meeting with one of his intendants. He was explaining the situation, saying there's not enough bread. You know, bread is the staple food for the people of France. I mean, think about it. What's the French, like, you know, food that is almost always they're associated with? The baguette, you know, big long bread piece. That's fair. I can see croissant, but, you know, bread. You know. So, says that they don't have enough, there's no flour, we can't make bread. And so she, feeling rather clever, says, well, if they can't eat bread, let them eat cake instead. That's, thank you, the lady. I'll be sure to tell them that, you know. Of course, you know, the stupid thing is you need to make cake with flour. You know, it's the same thing. It's just sweet versus savory. So, you know, the thing is that she's so dumb, so disconnected from everyday life. She doesn't even know that, you know. This is used as a means of raising a hatred of and a lack of support of the monarchy. So, again, it's never actually, she never said it, but it's enough to make people mad about it. On Friday, we will watch a video that goes into a little bit more detail as to why people were so upset with Marie Antoinette, as well as Louis XVI. So as I said, we have economic unrest, social unrest, more and more money spent on the costly wars and lavish court. Second estate, first estate aren't paying taxes. So eventually he has to meet with the Estates General to try to fix this problem. And immediately things are not working out. Basically it turns into a whole bunch of finger pointing. The third estate is basically going to become sick with the situation and say, we're going to form our own government then. and they start writing their own constitution. One thing I find terribly bemusing about the opening part of the French Revolution, it's almost like passive-aggressive time. Like, for instance, let me ask you a question. If you were king, and you found out that your representatives in the government were starting their own government, they were just writing their own constitution, how would you respond to that? I mean, obviously, you want to stop them. How do you stop them? That's what you can do. Well, sure, you could acquiesce to their request. Say, okay, fair enough. Let's make this new government. I'm interested to hear what you say. That could work. What else? You can pull a Charles I, send in your armies, just arrest everybody. That could work. Heck, there was one guy, he did that and basically had all the leaders meet in one building, locked the doors, and then had his cannoneers practice their artillery, bombing it to the ground, killing everyone inside. So there's that option as well. Louis takes, as I said, a very passive-aggressive approach. He basically puts a lock on the doors of the Parliament building and says you can't go in. Darn it, you foiled our clever ruse. Can't possibly create a government now. Although in truth there is a problem with this. Think of it this way. How many buildings in Louisville could you think of that could house 50,000 people? There's that. 50,000?
No, it's Churchill.
Perhaps Churchill Downs. How about the Kentucky Exposition Center, I noticed?
Yeah.
Or the Fair and Expo Center.
What about the...
That's probably not cool.
What about Freedom?
Yeah, someone gets the film center. But that's the interesting thing is we came up with 2 conference buildings and then a couple sports stadiums. Guess what the parliamentaries do? They go to a sports stadium. No joke. Only in this case it's a tennis court. And there, they all take an oath where they swear they will not rest until the French government is based on the principles of the Enlightenment, freedom for all, yada, yada, yada. It's called the tennis court oath. True story. Like I said, it's a little passive-aggressive, but eventually things heat up. But the thing is, Louis isn't not caring. It's not like he doesn't care if everything falls apart. He's just not very good at being a leader. You're going to see, like, there are many points throughout the revolution that he could have done something to stay in power. He could have done something where he could have come out on top. Heck, a good leader could have taken hold of this revolutionary fervor and created something new. But he just bumbles his way through mistake after mistake and eventually is executed for it. Which, to put into perspective, public executions were still more about the spectacle. People went and watched them. However, the Enlightenment is all about humanity. We don't want to cause pain. We still believe that executions are necessary, but they shouldn't be painful experiences. Now, do you guys know the most common form of execution in Europe at this point? Actually, no, believe it or not. More common was hanging. But beheading was something that was reserved for the nobility. Well, guess who's mostly going to be executed? Nobles. That being said, it was also seen as we're going to bring this privilege to everybody because it's thought, and really, hanging someone's really difficult because the idea is to break their neck, not strangle them to death, and people do strangle pretty often. So this was seen as a much more efficient way. The problem, though, is human error. Again, what happens if the human in question misses? They're going to cause a lot of pain. You're going to have a nearly headless neck. So the Enlightenment called for a new form of execution, and a council of doctors met to discuss how are we going to make this more humane? How do we behead someone and not cause pain? And they came up with a device. that was named after one of the doctors, Dr. Guillotin, which we call the guillotine. It was originally based on a Scottish design called the Flying Molly. Basically, it looked like an axe blade with a heavy weight on top, supported by two rails that dropped down and cut someone's head off. But there's a lot of design flaws with it. So if we're going to behead someone, the first thing we want to do is keep the head in place. We don't want to move. So they took a device called a pillory. Basically what a pillory was is a wooden frame that was designed simply to hold someone's head in place. Generally, these were locked together, and maybe with the hands up, you'd set someone in the middle of town square and make fun of them, essentially, for something that they've done wrong. So if someone steals, it's still a little sign around their head that says this person has stolen. If they have, an extramarital affair, you say, I'm a cuckold or something to that effect, and all these different types of things. Basically, it was public shame. If you look at it from the top, though, like so, it's got a slit in it. That's where the blade's going to go. So the blade comes through, and there you go. Then you put a nice little basket down here so you can catch the head when it comes down. So then you support it with a frame. It comes up like so. And split it out. And usually, like behind it, there's a board, goes like that you would have the person laying down on, face down that way. And up here you have the pulley, the string attached to the blade, and this rope comes down here, and eventually it's spring loaded, so basically with hold you press a button, but basically you just hold the string, that's good. But here's the idea. The original design had a blade look like that, in sort of axe shape, but it's not really good at cutting heads on because all of the weight's right there, all of the pressure's right there. So it more like crushes the neck and takes the head off. So that's not going to be really good at what we want to do. We don't want to cause head. So then they came up with this idea to make it more like a straight razor, like square design. That's not good either, though. Consider it this way. Have you guys ever had a steak and tried to just cut it by pushing the knife into it? It doesn't work real well, does it? You got to slice, yeah? Guys, neck is meat. We are made of meat. So they design it this way. Why this way? Because if you have this angle like so, it comes down, it's putting pressure like so, it's slicing. It was usually efficient. It was thought to be painless, but there's a problem. You see, any situation where you have a public execution, it was really a human thing. A human being was taken to life. Yes, they wore a mask to try to disassociate themselves with it. But they didn't wear it because they didn't want people to know who they were. Everyone knew who the executioner was. They knew them. That's their job. Hey, Fred, how you doing? But the mask was the symbol of justice. This is the state causing this execution. We don't even need that anymore because the machine is doing it. This takes away the human emotion from the act, which meant that people who would normally be sickened by this or said, no, this is wrong, don't. It's not a big deal. It's not a human being causing this death. It's like a force of nature, like starvation. It just happens. And the problem with that is that this becomes a common way of trying to control people during the second phase of the French Revolution. They're going to use the guillotine so often it takes on this almost symbolic mythos of death. It becomes a symbol of terror for the people. So we're talking about with the things. The thing, though, that actually begins the French Revolution in full, though, is on July 14th, 1789. The people rise up and attack the Bastille. The Bastille was also a symbol, you might remember. That was the prison that Voltaire was sent to. It was a place where the king sent his enemies. It was a military fortress. It was meant to intimidate and frighten the people. They were tired of being frightened. They were tired of being intimidated. They eliminated it piece by piece. In truth, they were originally going in there to get weapons because they had an armory inside, magazines. And they took it one step further and ended up gaining control the building, freeing the prisoners, and then, as I said, destroying. So the situation that France is going to find itself in is more and more chaotic without a strong leader. The significance of that is time and time again, the people of France are looking for someone to be their founding fathers, their person who is going to control things, their person that everyone can aspire to. And we see a number of people who attempt to do so, but don't succeed for a variety of reasons. The Marquis de Lafayette, he's too old. The Maximilien Robespierre, he's too brutal. The five-man director is too ineffectual. It's not until one man was able to capture the imagination of the French people by his military successes, by his savvy, by his charisma, by his politicking. It's not until someone takes control that people are really going to follow. And that would be Napoleon. The situation in France was so bad, people were just hoping someone would take control. And this is a guy who knows how to politic. He knows how to take it. He's handsome. He's well-spoken. He's personable. He's the type of guy that would be able to talk to somebody, but at the same token had this sort of like inner nobility that made everyone want to impress him. I mean, he was the type of guy who, while he had his enemies, amongst the common people in France, he was beloved. And that's something that any political leader would dream to be. I mean, he's the type of guy who people named after him, that sort of thing. And that is why the age of Napoleon is going to be so significant. Let's check something here real quick, because I'm not sure how much farther we'll be able to get today. Let's see, 119. Yeah, we're going to be done with this section right here. I'll show you a picture, but that's about it. So this is the last of it. So what do we know about Napoleon? The thing I often hear people say is he was short. But he really wasn't. Strangely enough, he was 5'6", which is short for today, but back then that was the average height. And why do we think he's short? Because the British were scared to death of this guy. Everybody was. Even his military defeats were victories for him. And he was able to politically follow it to such a degree that he always won. You know, he's conquered all of Europe, with the exception of Britain and Russia. And Russia as well. That's not a good point. I mean, he is a threat. So how do you deal with threats? You make fun of them. You make light of them. Oh, look, yeah, but he's a little guy. It's not such a big deal. You know, it's you take the fear out of it by making fun of things. So that is partially why we think of him as being rather short, because of British propaganda. Now, again, you might notice I said defeat. He was defeated in battle several times. One of his greatest defeats was actually a naval battle fought against the British at Trafalgar. Yet, he is often able to make it seem like he's still winning. It's the best way I can describe it. I mean, there are instances where he does things that completely do not make any sense to his enemies, and yet it ends up leading him either to victory or able to outmaneuver his individuals. Another thing about Napoleon, guys, is he was a military genius. And we often say that someone's like, oh, she's such a genius, or he's a genius, things like that, but we don't actually mean it. We just mean they're smart. I mean, this is a guy who is so smart and such a good multitasker. He's able to think 5 or 6 steps ahead of anybody else. like one of the things he would do pretty commonly is he would dictate letters. Basically, that's where you have someone, you're saying what you want someone to write down as if you're writing the letter. He was doing that in his head, and he would have 6 conversations with 6 different people at the same time. He was able to keep everything straight. His battle plans were so intricate that he was able to take advantage of the situation where other people didn't recognize it was there. He was also a very good planner. One of the biggest problems with any military action is planning ahead of time, the food, the ammunition, all this sort of stuff. And he was really good at that. He was really good at feeding off the land he was on. Ultimately, though, that's going to fail for him. We'll get to later why. That's a picture of thing. It's actually maybe his Mexican, I can't remember. But that's something sort of. They can just imagine all these people packed into this building. Sorry. Well, what's interesting is look what's going on down here. Who are these folks? Yep. That's because the first estate sees what's happening, and they switch sides. The priest backed the third estate. So now it's 2-on-1 the other way. That's a significant event. We're changing by gaining the will of the people into a force of revolution. Anyways, that is it for today. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow.